Hello everyone, my name is Zoe Dillman and today I will be presenting my thesis titled, What's in a Label? To start off, does labeling an elementary student with the learning difficulty diagnosis actually allow for them to reach their full potential, or rather, does the associated stigma burden their learning experience? On the one hand, it can be helpful providing students with individual education plans. However, they will also have to learn to deal with society's stigma regarding their disability. In my study, I focused on how these three factors, diagnosis, severity, and gender, influenced achievement expectations for an elementary student. Students are often referred to for a learning disability assessment based on their academic achievement, and so an essential part of teachers' jobs consists of judging students' academic performance. And so this is why I chose to measure achievement expectations using an Ontario Elementary Progress Report card. Students were then graded on a scale ranging from needs improvement, satisfactory, good, and excellent on 6 learning skills: responsibility, organization, independent work, collaboration, initiative, and self-regulation. There seems to be an overall consensus in the literature that the more specific the learning disability diagnosis, the less stigma the student should face. So in this study, the student's diagnosis was varied to represent a spectrum of stigma, ranging from an undiagnosed learning difficulty to a general learning disability and finally to a more specific diagnosis, ADHD. I predicted that students labeled with ADHD would be more likely to receive a grade in a higher category than students with an undiagnosed learning difficulty or with a learning disability. Research has shown that a student with a severe diagnosis is less likely to face stigma than a student with a mild diagnosis. Therefore, I predicted that students with a severe diagnosis would be more likely to be given a grade in a lower category, such as needs improvement, compared to students with a mild diagnosis. Moreover, the literature highlights a lack of research done with females, so seeing as ADHD is more frequently diagnosed in boys relative to girls, I predicted that male students would be more likely to receive a grade in a lower category than females. Participants were recruited either from psychology courses at Glendon or from a Facebook group made up of Glendon students. Those from the Facebook group were recruited online, whereas the rest were recruited in class and were verbally explained that they would receive a 1% bonus mark added to their final grade in exchange for their participation. Once they accessed the survey online, they read the informed consent agreement, which outlined that participation was anonymous and voluntary and there was no penalty for not participating. They then read one of 12 vignettes about a grade 3 student named either Michelle or Michael, who was depicted as having either a mild or severe, undiagnosed learning difficulty, learning disability, or ADHD, and then they graded the students' in-class performance. Following this, they answered a personal data questionnaire providing their age and gender identity. Afterwards, participants read a debriefing letter that highlighted the study's true aim and asked them to maintain confidentiality. A total of 4 participants were excluded from the analysis due to missing data, thus the sample amounted to 96. The average age of participants was 23, counting only 12 male-identified and 84 female-identified participants. Results revealed that participants assigned higher category grades, such as excellent or good, to elementary students labeled with ADHD compared to those with an undiagnosed learning difficulty or learning disability in all learning skills. This is similar to previous findings, acknowledging the fact that the ADHD label provides a reasonable explanation for the associated behaviors and thus acts as a protective factor for ADHD-labeled students. Moreover, this also supports the assumption that being more specific about the type of disability effectively reduces the associated stigma. For all learning skills except independent work, students with a mild diagnosis were more likely to be graded in a higher category than students with a severe diagnosis. This indicates that participants held lower achievement expectations for students displaying severe symptoms compared to those who presented more mild symptoms. With this being said, it may be beneficial to refrain from labeling children who only present mild ADHD behaviors. Contrary to predictions, compared to female students, males were more likely to be given a higher grade in all but 2 of the learning skills, organization and responsibility. This indicates that participants held lower expectations for female students. Perhaps because ADHD is more frequently diagnosed in boys relative to girls, participants may have lowered their expectations for the male students and may have been less harsh when evaluating them. When interpreting the results of the current study, several limitations should be taken into account. First, the findings cannot be generalized to the population of the elementary students of all socioeconomic and ethnic groups, and this study only recruited university students, so future studies should replicate these findings with groups with different age and cultural backgrounds. Also, this study used self-report measures. Even though it has been shown that self-reported answers are more reliable when collected online, there's still a possibility of inaccurate responses. And lastly, given that there is a progressive increase in awareness of mental health stigma, it is possible that positive expectations arise from the participants' want for social desirability. For this reason, future research would benefit from examining implicit attitudes or actual behavioral changes. To conclude, this study identifies potentially negative implications for elementary students with general learning difficulties. Schools and teachers need to continue raising awareness regarding the stigma that students with general learning disabilities will face throughout their academics. Thank you!